How's our day, people?
So good. How about yourself?
Really good.
How are you enjoying Chiller?
I'm enjoying it thoroughly. Nice folks. I have to say, I love your passion. Generally speaking, it's just such a pleasure. It's one of my favorite things about this experience is really locking in. You know, it's a strange thing when you're moved by media to the point of wanting to collect, things about it that remind you of it and revive those feelings. And what I find is, the minute the general polite courtesies are exchanged and you lock in and you kind of go a little deeper, it's just fascinating to see the depth and clarity of so many, of these interesting individuals I've met, and what makes them tick, or certainly what resonates. But the movies are always an interesting key to so much more, and it ain't about me. And that's what's interesting on the other side of the table. So I thank you for bringing all of your stories and sharing them. More to the point, it's really been interesting and a pleasure. So thank you.
And thank you for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for saying that, because sometimes a lot of people don't say that. A lot of people come here, they don't mention that. That's nice.
It's the nicest thing about it. I mean, it's, we don't get it, I'm fortunate to get to do theater once in a while, every 5 years or so, and you meet people after the show. Other than the odd encounter, on one-on-one when you're out there, but this is like, it's live analytics, and it's nice to know what people like and what resonates, and when someone, starts hitting your talking points on a movie that you've, beat the drum for, or really love, and or you hoped that an audience would resonate with maybe finer currents of a performance, and it just lands, and you guys got it, and it's just like, wow, there's a real connection there, and you know why you're doing it. There's nothing better than that. So thank you again.
So what made you want to become an actor?
I was fortunate enough to be exposed to classic cinema as a child. My parents were, I guess, semi-professional actors, maybe professional, in that they were doing theater in Chicago, and at that time, it wasn't Broadway, or Hollywood, but it was formidable live theater in the city, and I grew up watching them perform, and then watching the movies that inspired them. They saw Singing in the Rain 42 times when they were teenagers, in the theater, right? They were fanatics, but for, the best of that MGM window under Arthur Freed's unit, which I think operated between 1950 and 54. There was a lot of bad musicals certainly made around those days, but there were some great ones, and they shared the best. And it was that incredible, those consistent examples of the best of the human condition. Incredible specimens doing unbelievable things, coming out of vaudeville. Gene Kelly, triple threat, just crushing it. You're going, well, what, expression of manhood is that, That is, both romantic and tough and cool, but like an acrobat, and, playing upon your swashbuckling kind of, as a kid, you want to be Zorro or D'Artagnan, and there he was doing that, but then he's tap dancing, and then he's singing, and I was going, that looks like the coolest job, and he was with, the most beautiful women doing the equally amazing things. So, movies made me want to do movies.
So what's the first movie you saw that actually made you want to go through?
No, it's a good question. But he's here for a reason.
No, actually, that was the question. Thank you, Vincent. Go ahead.
Sorry.
It might have been, I'd like to think it was Singing in the Rain, but it might have been The Pirate, which was Vincent Minnelli directing his then wife, Judy Garland, with Gene. And because it played to a young boy's kind of love of Douglas Fairbanks or whatever, you know, that heroic thing, but with this, it was my first glimpse at irony that wasn't kind of postmodern or kind of snarky. It was funny because it's a movie about actors, really. He poses as, he finds out Judy Garland's fantasy is this pirate, and he pretends to be him to win her love, and it gets him in trouble and nearly gets him hung. But he's an actor, and it's just a joke about being, you know, a vaudevillian, but in the 1700s in the Caribbean. But the jokes were about modern day cinema, or, you know, it's a great movie. You should try to watch it. I think it's on every platform, more or less, maybe a couple. The Pirate. And then Wolfman, you know, on a black and white on a black and white TV, you know, and that was spooky as heck. Right, I mean, you know, it was just awesome. That was good. Any other questions, folks?
Yeah, so Back to the Future.
Yes, you in front.
You in front. Back to the Future. So, how do you recall getting the role in that? One of the larger movies that you were recognizable facing.
That was my first professional gig. That was my first movie, first job, other than like an industrial film in Chicago at 16 or something. I auditioned for a movie then called Paradox, which is what it was called, and for the Biff role. But they had already cast Biff, so they had no way of reading actors for his friends, because there were no lines for his friends, you know. But they wanted to just put a mix of characters that made sense aesthetically, and I read Biff and did found the humor in it, I guess, or the reading went well, but I think it was just about type. And I remember Bob Gale saying, I reminded him of Buzz from Rebel Without a Cause. I looked like the actor. When I was 18, I guess I looked like Buzz from Rebel. And that coupled with the reading, coupled with the fact that I remember specifically dressing for this audition in a very kind of subtle way without really hitting it on the nose. It just showed I appreciated retro media and comment. I wore a Jetsons t-shirt, which was, George and, Judy and his boy Elroy, it was just all of them on there. And it was very subtle, and I didn't comment on it, but it was, you couldn't miss it, and I knew you had to stand out. And he referenced it when we were on set, and I was like, aha, it worked, They remembered. They're like, you like the Jetsons, you're cool, I like the Jetsons. It's like, I let Hanna-Barbera do the heavy lifting, basically.
Oh, I love Hanna-Barbera, too. Yeah. So I want to jump ahead a few years to Dead Calm, which a really great thriller.
Thank you.
And you're actually Chicago Film Critics Most Promising Newcomer, and that's of note as well. I think that is your first award.
I believe that is, yes.
So what do you recall from Dead Calm, the filming?
I remember, where to begin? I remember the sense, the feeling of nothing to lose, and you have two windows to really kind of invent yourself. When you arrive, as it were, and with a role like that, and when you come back. And I remember finding, sorry, I keep giving you, sir, can you take one more photo? Because I keep giving you two terrible expressions. Let's just pose one. I'll pretend it's candid. I'm like, here we go. Any day now. You're a gentleman, delete those others. Literally, I'm like, I might as well be flossing or something. Dead Calm. Phil Noyce, amazing director. You know, I remember getting, you know, wearing the same suit as him in the audition for some reason, some weird kind of, you know, mid-'80s crushed kind of weird silk thing that people wore as some like Miami Vice hangover. I don't know, it was just weird blue, and he had it on, and I thought, oh God, I either lost the job or I got it, you know, and like I was like, you know, we looked at each other like, yeah, sorry. And then I remember improvising in the audition and making Huey funny while being scary, and that became kind of like something that seemed to resonate and work, and I kept reusing. I also remember Philip directing right next to the camera, which is such a gift, and I advise any directors in the room to utilize it. Don't go in the tent 40 yards away and direct from a watchman. Direct your actors, because we love to perform for you, you know, and give and get that immediate response. Be right next to the lens. That was awesome. And those wonderful actors in one, you know, seeing Nicole, you know, blossom, and working with Sam, who I was always a fan of. It was a great pleasure. And mining currents that were not necessarily in the script, and given the free, you know, the encouragement to do so, was a great privilege at that early stage of my career.
Yeah, you were. It's really interesting. You're equally terrifying in that role, and yet very. I think at the time there were a lot of women's like, oh, he's so magnetic, and you know that was the thing. You attracted and repelled with that. That was really good.
Thank you.
And I think that a lot of people got that, maybe not immediately, but in retrospect, as people refer back to that movie and your partner, it's really good.
Well, the idea we thought was to challenge, you know, he wasn't, you know, he was a victim of trauma and acted out with a degree of hopelessness that he thought he was doomed on a sinking ship, and lost the plot, definitely, you know, no question. And then suddenly, you know, the laws of man and the sea came crushing in, and it just couldn't process. You know, the rationale was the dude just wanted, like, you know, to sail off into the sunset and have a happy ending to this horrible story at the expense of, you know, anyone who stood in the way of that, which, you know, thus the criminality around the behavior. He wasn't, you know, born evil nor diabolical. He was shaped by circumstance, and we thought, in order to make it more unnerving, was to play with the audience's sympathies a little bit, where you just start to go, you know, yeah, they're a more age-appropriate couple, and they were, you know, she was 19, I was 21, right, and we were, and then, you know, they look cute together on screen, and there's moments of like, and the minute you catch yourself going, what am I thinking? Your husband's drowning on this boat, you're challenged in your own sense of, you know, morality, and so that we thought was a really practical and unique use of time in the narrative that could have otherwise been tedious with just three people, and if I was, you know, one note, you know, axe murderer on a boat, it would have been like, whatever.
No, but you weren't. No. Memphis Belle was another interesting role after that. What do you recall about that movie, which was, again, Chicago film critics took note of you in that?
That was an extraordinary experience. Most of the crew were still alive at the time and visited us while we made the film. It's a phenomenal story, for those who know it or don't. William Wyler's film is just coming out right now. I think on limited release. They restored his film about a flying fortress bomber crew in World War II that were the first to achieve the unachievable, which was actually make it through 25 missions over Germany. The war at that time was a meat grinder, and no one was making it out of there. And they had to give, you know, the idea was, you know, finally a crew had succeeded, so there was a sense of hope that these young men or some, you know, might come back from these these horrible daylight bombing raids, and but they had to persevere. They had to, fighting fascism at that scale it's just what was required in the sacrifice. And they, it was their last mission, and it was a kind of pretty shit detail, and not the PR stunt that they were told it would be. Not that they cared about that really, but they would have liked to have known it was maybe a little easier. The experience was, we went up in one of the planes on the 4th of July, which was kind of interesting, and it was made by now Sir David Putnam, Michael Caton Jones, great director, directing Richard Watkins, Wendy Watkins, we called him, great master of light, incredible crew, some of the best, the finest of British cinema. We shot at Pinewood on the James Bond stage, which was huge for me. I was always a huge classic Bond fan. Remember being in line at the cafeteria in Pinewood in my, I love that A2 jacket and that, officer's cap and World War II gear, and lining up, and Sean Connery was in line next to me doing Russia House. And I'm like the biggest Connery fan, and I was just like, it was like Gene Kelly, Sean Connery, right? That's what I get in movies. And there he was, and he's like 6'5". I mean, the guy's enormous, and just, kept himself, and I didn't bug him, because you don't want to bug someone when they're eating, I guess. But I was just, and we were in a room that I recognized from 5 of the Bond movies. They made them all at Pinewood. I mean, the cafeteria was, MI6, and then Smersh, or God knows what else. But that was a great experience. And playing the bombardier in that movie was a hoot. I shot Super 8 that almost identically matched some of the footage of Wyler's footage. I realized after the fact. I copied a shot taking off in the nose, which is a plexiglass dome where you hang out, and you're not supposed to take off down there in case there's an issue, because you got to go through the floor of the cockpit. Everyone takes off in the radio room, and you can climb out a open window by the waist gunner in case something happens, which often did. I didn't know this. I was lying on my belly going, yeah, let's go, in the nose of this thing, and watching the earth fall away and us cruise over Dover. And I shot this shot that started in blackness, and as we pulled away, the shadow of the plane bouncing over the farmland, And then I saw the documentary afterwards. I was like, I did that shot, There's so many places you could put the damn camera in there, but good memories.
So, Tombstone, which big fan favorite nowadays. Well, it always was, right? Everybody's quoting dialogue. What do you can recall about that?
That was it's an extraordinary cast. Kevin Jarre's incredible script. I had just finished filming Posse in Arizona right beforehand. All right. Great movie. Mario Van Peebles starring and directing. East and West Coast rap representatives on horseback. Never see that again. That was crazy. I was like, when are you gonna see that? It was just amazing. I loved it. Hip hop western. When are you gonna see that? I want to go do another one. It's killer. Great score. Big Daddy Kane on horseback. Father Time. Tone Loc. Killing it. But you asked about Tombstone. Sorry. I had fun with them, I met Isaac Hayes, for Christ. That was cool. So I stayed in Arizona for a long time, and then drifted over to that, epic. And I had arrived to play your friend says, hey, I want you to come do a Western for me. It's about Tombstone, and you show up ready to ride hell for leather, get all set to go, and he hands you a cod piece and some tights, and you go, I'm the actor, okay. That's not what I expected, but it was a great character, Mr. Fabian. That role of Josie was, the female lead, very strong female for that time, was inspired by my sister, Lisa Zane, who's downstairs. You can see her. She and Kevin were together for a while right before he made that, and she inspired that role and much of the ethos of the character and independence of Josie. You can ask her all about that if you so wish. It's pretty amazing story.
Next, I'm cherry picking because of time, but The Phantom.
Yes.
Yes, which I actually loved you in that role. I saw that in the theater. I was like, hey, this is fun, man. And look where we are now with comic book superhero movies and the like. But I used to read, collected versions of the strips of that before that movie came out. So I already know about that, and so it was really cool to see you embody that on the screen. Can you do Cliff Notes version of how you got that part?
Yeah, sorry, I go on a bit, don't I? Make it tight. I was exposed to the comic in Australia when I was doing Sniper, and they would issue the ink on newsprint reissues available in the newsstand along with their daily newspaper. It was literally part of the national character and fabric of Australia, and I think informed every young man and actor we have from that country who carry the kind of blokey moral compass and stature of a do-gooder, and he just resonated with me. I thought this, here's a superhero with no superpowers other than just being super humane, and he was happy. He enjoyed being a jungle lord and kind of like Batman of the Jungle, even though he was the first masked superhero of the genre before Batman and Superman. And, not that Superman was masked, but whatever. And I wanted the role for years, and it came around, and I was maybe too young, or didn't have the traction at the time, and then it fell apart, and then by the time it came around, I was just right in the right place, right time, and knew the character so well that when I screen tested for it, I just kind of crushed it. I tried to be as true to the silhouette and behavior, and the stance and posture and, almost Errol Flynn-like, joie de vivre and enjoyment. Thanks. I tried to, it was in me, and what I love is when fans of The Phantom talk about the very things that I love about the character. I see it in them. I see that nobility and that love of goodness, and decency and strength and moral compass in all of you, when you step up. I just want to, young man or woman talks about what they love about, or old man or woman, talk about what they love about the Phantom. I see the Phantom in them. It's like, it's really, it's attainable, because again, there's no superpowers, it's just life choices. And what resonates with oneself. And to see how that character has grown in esteem of late, more than ever, is not a surprise, but is a pleasant assurance. If you're not familiar with the movie, watch it, share it with your kids. Again, you can let classic cinema, now it's become a classic, do some of the heavy lifting. It's a real great instructional on, a map to the minefield.
Oh, well put. No. So I wanted to ask about Titanic, of course. We're going to get to you again. Because I have to, because people would shoot me afterwards. You didn't ask about Titanic.
I'm good for time if you guys are. Sorry about that. I'll keep it short.
So, Titanic.
I've heard of it.
All right, so instead of, how did you get the roles? So, was it very grueling working on that production, with all the stuff going on during...
Yeah. But
it's what I do, right?
What do you expect? It's a movie about a sinking ship in cold water. It was cold, and it was, it was hard. But yes, it was. I don't mean to belittle it, but that's what got you through it. You don't bellyache about those things. What do you think you signed on for? A movie about the Titanic.
So how was Cameron to work
Amazing.
Work for? as director?
First in the water, last out. Total respect. Yeah, every day. So you had no grounds to go, I'm cold, it's wet, I don't want to be wet. And, it's like, sorry, what'd you sign on for? It's every movie's a military, exercise.
If you had to be one person there that just didn't like getting into the
Yeah, me. But I did it. And then I also chose that it would be very clever for the character to be like a cat. Cal would never get wet until he finally got wet while he was chasing him, trying to shoot him. And he'd step on anybody or anything. I thought, wouldn't it be clever? And I sold him on this idea. Wouldn't it be great if he never got wet on the Titanic? Wouldn't that be ironic? I was like, it would be so telling. The best thing about that character was we would literally, he yells cut, and we'd giggle like kids because we just adored the hubris of Cal, who was well-intended. He loved her, but he was, maybe some bad programming, but he really carried the hubris of the age and the idea that he was so confident about getting off the boat, it didn't even register. It's like sinking, schminking, whatever. Where's the girl? It was just like such a non-issue, which is so bloody arrogant and funny in a way. It was entertaining to us because it was just clueless and seemed to work in a curious way. And of course, is ripe for comeuppance and its own tragedy and, aha moment. So it seemed to work, but the process of playing that character and that guy with, was something I relished every day, and we extracted great joy from throughout.
Okay, I'm going to take one magical question from the audience. Not you? Yes, ma'am.
I saw online where it said that you might have been up for Dirty Dancing. Are you a great dancer that we don't know about?
Well, thank you. If that's an invitation to dance, I accept. See you at the party after. I did audition for Dirty Dancing, and I was down to, I think it was the final 4. Sarah Jessica Parker and I were a couple, and Miss Gray and Patrick were the other. And it was, I was amazed it went that far. My love of musicals was certainly being, tempted to play Johnny Castle, which I thought was like, also touched upon my other mad favorite genre of Elvis movies, which I adore. Yeah. So I was like, that was just killer. But I was so young, man. I was barely 19. I think Pat had a couple years on me, as Johnny should have been. I thought I was not over my head, but I knew it was a stretch. But I got it as far as I probably could and should. And I think he was a Broadway hoofer. He was a properly trained dancer. I can move. I came out, I was trained in musical theater, but I was winging it. And I think I danced to like Billy Idol in my audition or something. It was just like dancing with myself. I was like, is this working? I hope this is working. and it got, they entertained it as far as they probably should have. Pat was amazing in it, so, But yeah, it was,
No, that's something I didn't know. Our time is up. Please thank Billy Zane for coming.